So last night it was Marquise Buford Sr. who threw me a $10 super chat. Then tonight it was Mario Buford who had a touchdown saving tackle to save me $200 on my minus 31 Nebraska. So shout out to the Buford family for making sure I got grocery money for the week. I think I need a Buford Brothers t-shirt or something because they got me covered. But that game, I'm gonna be honest with you, I got some mixed feelings. There were times where I felt really good. The offense was fiery at the start. The defense, slowed down, had a slow start in the beginning, and then they kind of picked it up halfway through the game, and you started to gain a little bit more confidence. But, the choppiness and kind of the emotional swings I was feeling made it really put things into perspective. Because if you go back to the Frost era, you're like, all right, well, every time Nebraska would play in a game like that, a rock fight, a team who was modeled like the Big Ten or a team who understood what Nebraska's weaknesses were, would run right at them and attack them, Nebraska would struggle and they wouldn't come out as 31-point victors. And I realized, wow, I'm at a point now as a fan where I can nitpick all of these little things that in the past, I was just been happy with a 1-point win, right? So just take a breath for a second. I haven't even read the chat yet, but I can guarantee what the chat says. They weren't extremely happy with the results, or they weren't pumped up throughout the entire game. They were questioning some things because, I saw some messages on Instagram when we were watching it. But overall, I'm sure we all share the same sentiment, which is we're happy. We can take a sigh of relief. Sorry, I've got a lot of thoughts in my head. Take a sigh of relief and just say, look, Nebraska's 3-0 for the first time since, I don't even know when. And they are going into a game against Illinois, their first Big Ten opponent of the year. Yep, first Big Ten opponent of the year. And there's a legitimate shot that they're going to win that game and continue on this hot stretch that we're all hoping they can maintain. All of this momentum that they've built up to this point, we're hoping that they can continue that on. So nothing tonight changed my perspective from that lens, okay? I'm happy that they won. But Northern Iowa came in and presented some real problems. And they showed that Nebraska, when they go and play against Big Ten teams, it's not like it was when they played against UTEP. It's not like it was when they played against Colorado. The different style of football is going to be more of a challenge for them to adjust to. Now, let me say this, and I know there's super chats coming. I can see them out of the corner of my eyes. I got a lot going on. I got my phone screen lighting up. I got to flip that thing over. I got the super chat going. I'm going to get to all of it. Let me just take a breath. But what was I saying? Oh, Nebraska and the Big Ten play. These other teams they played against presented different challenges. Now Nebraska's going to have to adjust. And the one thing that gives me confidence and hope that tonight was a little bit of a fluke, well, I guess we'll say it's two things. One is that they played down to the level of their competition to some degree, because if Nebraska would have played up to the level like they did against Colorado, they would have won this game tonight 58-7 or whatever it would have been, right? They would have scored a lot more. It would have been a little bit more polished. Dylan Raiola wouldn't have slipped at the goal line, and Nebraska wouldn't have had to settle for a field goal in that position. There were situations like that where you're looking, you're like, head scratcher, like, come on. Positive out of that, though, was Tristan Alvano did make his field goal. So shout out Tristan Alvano nailing his, was it 3 field goals and 3 extra points? I think it was 3 extra points, 3 field goals. Whatever it was, shout out to Tristan Alvano. Okay, let's get back to the main point I was trying to make. Nebraska played a lot of different guys early. You saw 2, I think it was 2. It was Ja'Cory Barney and it was Carter Nelson come out the gates. I don't know if they were starting right away, but I know Ja'Cory was. But I don't know if Carter Nelson was the first receiver in the set on the field. It doesn't matter. Those 2 accounted for 4 of the first 5 catches, I believe. So Dylan, true freshman, Ja'Cory, true freshman, Carter, true freshman. You're rolling out an offense with 3 true freshmen again in an opener of a game. It doesn't matter what level the competition is. Just the fact that you're throwing to them, relying on them, trusting them to move the ball downfield and score touchdowns, it says a lot. Go over to the defensive side of the ball. Same thing. You're not playing with Mekhi Bayer. You're not playing with Jamari Butler. Not that Cam Lenhart's a schmuck or anything, or Stephon Thompson can't be out there doing his thing, but, it's a new rotation. It's not the same defensive front that lined up out there the last 2 weeks when the game kicked off. So there was some newness. You got a lot of new faces in throughout the game, and obviously the goal was, let's see more guys in the rotation. Let's see how many guys you can get in the game. And I think it's easier to fill individuals in to the starting lineups than to just send the entire second unit out. So obviously a positive takeaway overall, but it made for us, to answer or ask some questions throughout the game, like, why is it not looking as polished as it usually is? And I think it's just a combo of the young players playing down the level of competition, not as much excitement as there was last week to play against Colorado. And it just, it didn't look as shiny as we had all hoped it would. Now, there were moments where there were really big fireworks, okay? A prime example, Dylan Raiola hits Jalen Lloyd down the left sideline, right? That was massive. I think he avoided a sack to do that one. It was like a 50-yard pass or something. You had the plays to Ja'Cory Barney. Those were all good. Ja'Cory had a bunch of opportunities. You had Dante Dowdell with a big run up the right sideline. You had Raiola's zone read. That was impressive. I think that was a third down that converted for a first. So there were a bunch of plays where you looked and you said, okay, well, that was really exciting. On the flip side, there were some that made you say, well, what the hell's going on? I think there were only a couple. I think it was really the Dylan slipping at the goal line. I mentioned that one. He was in a one-on-one position with, it was either the corner or the linebacker. Regardless, he should have been able to get in for a touchdown. Feet got out from under him. The next one was Naor with the punt block and tackling the punter. I thought he'd been able to slow himself down or at least keep himself up and grab onto the punter so he didn't take him down to the ground. That one gave Northern Iowa the ball, I don't know, it was around midfield, and it gave him a second opportunity. And that was the thing that really made most of us say, what the hell? Why is Nebraska making these sloppy errors? This is the old team errors. This is what we thought Matt Rule was coaching them out of. So, points of frustration, points of question, and I'm sure that because I am hypercritical and I have unrealistic expectations now because what I've seen over these last 2 weeks, tonight is just me overreacting a bit. So don't take what I'm saying and overreact the way I'm overreacting, right? I'm just an emotional mess. When I watch Nebraska football, I really get into my feelings. My friend FaceTimed me tonight, and I want to get to the chat. I know I really want to, but I want to make sure I get these opening statements out of the way. My friends FaceTimed me tonight, and they put on this like crying song when Nebraska was only up by 21 in the third quarter. And I was starting to get emotional. I was like, damn, this is really pissing me off. Like Nebraska should be up by, 30 at this point. They should be kicking these guys' ass. Northern Iowa is not that good of a football team. And it was an up and down night, at least for me as a fan watching it. And I'm sure some of you felt the exact same way. Let's get to the chat because I know you guys have your own opinions and thoughts. Jim, thank you for the 555. He says 1-0 3 weeks in a row. Wasn't as easy as I had hoped. Stay healthy in GBR. And that's kind of my sentiment here. It wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. I thought they were going to come out and they were going to smack these guys in the mouth. I did not think we were going to see, what was it? A 10-minute opening drive by Northern Iowa? 10-minute opening drive, that's insanity. That's what Nebraska's supposed to do. Nebraska's supposed to manage the game. Nebraska's supposed to run the clock. How is Northern Iowa staying on the field that long? Why couldn't we force a 3-and-out? Why couldn't we get that ball back into our offense's hands? It is what it is. They won the game. Jim, thanks for the 555. Joel, thank you for the $10 super chat. If I see a comment, I'll respond to it. Jeff, thank you for the 10. Wait, let me pop you up. There we go. Jeff, thank you for the 10. Thank you for being a Corn Craze Army member. He says GBR, plenty of room for improvement. Also, especially actually, let me emphasize this. From the freshmen and young players getting in early, I think that's where we're going to see the biggest jump. You see those guys aren't as sharp or as refined, right? They haven't played as much. When you look at the defense, you're talking about guys, I think they popped up a graphic on the screen. I think it was 21 years old or 22 years old. The average age of the national championship teams last season for their defenses, I think Michigan was like 21 and a half and Washington was 22 and Nebraska right now is age 22. That's their average age. Something like that. Don't quote me, but it's around that. And so Nebraska has the benefit of having a bunch of guys who played in that stadium, dozens of times, who've been in all kinds of adverse situations. And now you have young players coming in and filling the holes, and they've never done it before. So they've got to learn, they've got to adjust, they've got to get that experience before we can expect a lot out of them. So plenty of room for improvement, especially for players like that. I think there's going to be room for improvement for Raiola as well. He had his opportunity to make some mistakes tonight. He had that interception, which people were like, oh, well, it wasn't an interception. If there was one thing I could credit you and I for, is that pick. The dude had a one-armed, I would call it a one-handed, but it wasn't a one-handed. He had a one-armed pick off Jalen Lloyd where he just outmuscled him. And I think Lloyd was just kind of in an awkward position. He wasn't able to get both hands around the ball and pull it out. So we saw that one-arm interception. Obviously, they tried to review it. Didn't go Nebraska's way. I couldn't argue it. I was like, man, it looks like that dude just made a miraculous play, and that's how the refs ruled it. Anyway, a lot of learning moments is my point. Raiola had some passes that didn't get to his receivers or were thrown behind him, and obviously Nebraska wasn't able to convert on some drives. They were having to settle for field goals, and I just didn't feel like this was a game where Nebraska should have to settle for field goals, They didn't have Micah Mazuka. That was another player who I didn't mention in the beginning of the video as someone who was out this game, and obviously that makes the offensive line have to operate a little bit differently, but if you're replacing one guy, you got to be still firing on all cylinders. This is a team sport, and one guy can't make or break you. So plenty of room for improvement. James, thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, kind of disappointed in how we played energy-wise. Hopefully we bring more energy and focus on Friday. I'll tell you what, it's really hard when you're a football player to go from the environment you were in last week against Colorado, a team you hate, a team you want to beat, a team who had your number last year, and then to bounce back and say, okay, we're going to go play a team who I don't know anything about, don't know any other players on the side on that team. I don't really care about this team. They're not a Big Ten opponent. They're not some sort of a rival. It's just kind of like, eh. And you know all week this team isn't very good. You watch film on them, and you're like, I'm going to dominate that guy. So it's just a different level. You don't have as much to prove. And because of that, as a player, you're not going to be as excited or amped up, which I totally understand. And that goes for all sports. That goes for everybody just in normal life. You're going to be more amped up when you're going up against somebody who, you know, brings it out inside of you, brings some sort of, I don't know, edge, I guess we'll call it. Nebraska didn't have any edge tonight when they took that field. I mean, they always have a little bit of an edge, but not the same as what we saw last week. Speaking on the edge, though, next week against Illinois, Nebraska has lost to them. A lot of these players have lost to them. And Illinois is going to be 3-0. I don't know if they're going to be ranked. Whether they're ranked or not, that's going to be a really tough game because Nebraska's playing on a Friday night in prime time. Illinois is bringing their all. Illinois is just a better version of Northern Iowa. They have a quarterback who can move. He can move around the pocket. I don't know how good of a runner Luke Altmaier is. I don't know if he's like the guy we saw tonight who could really run it. Let me see how many yards that quarterback ran for. Aiden Dune, 11 carries, 49 yards. I don't know if Luke Altmaier will move like that, but he's for sure a better passer. And then those running backs are just as big, better, more athletic, faster than what Nebraska saw tonight. So they're going to come out more inspired. It'll be more of a excited environment, obviously, with the fans since that's a Friday night primetime game. But I think this is their last game where they're going to have, I don't want to call it a letdown because it didn't feel like it was a letdown tonight, but it'll be the last game where they played chill. Scrolling back up for the super chats. I promise you I won't miss any. Okay, we got that one done. And we're on to Daniel. Thank you for being a member. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, it just feels good to win as a top 25 team. That's all that needs to be said. Well, here's the deal. It is all that needs to be said. Needs to be said. But here we don't talk about what needs to be said. We talk about what wants to be said. So, Daniel, I agree with you. The bottom line is Nebraska won. They keep it pushing. We're on to the next. But you know that's not how we do it here. Here we microanalyze every detail, and we care because we're like, man, how could Nebraska win a national championship? Because we drink Kool-Aid over here a little bit, just a little. We're as realistic as possible, but you know as well as I do that we got to get into it, and we got to talk about the fact of the matter, and that's that Nebraska didn't look like a playoff contending team tonight. Nebraska didn't look like a Big Ten champion team tonight. If Alabama would have been on this field, actually, let's use a more realistic example, someone who played today. Tennessee, the number 7 team in the country. I'm looking at the score right now. They played Kent State. They played at home. Similar situation as Nebraska. I think it was a daytime game for them. Not sure, though. It could have faded tonight. They won 71-0. That's what I expect out of Nebraska now. I know it's unrealistic. I know I shouldn't set those expectations in year 2 of a Matt Rule rebuild. I know it's ridiculous. But because of what we've seen so far, and because of Dylan Raiola and his play up to this point, and because the defense is so senior and they want it so bad, I'm like, why can't Nebraska win games by 70? Why can't they go into the half up 30-0, kick an onside kick, get it back, and just bury the team on the other side of the field? Especially since Kent State is a tougher opponent than Northern Iowa, right? But look, you're right. Daniel, I'm the crazy person, not you. You're logical, and what you just said is true. It's me who has issues. So I'm sorry that I have to vent my issues out to you. Nebraska's in a good position. It's all going to be okay. Again, thank you for being a Corn Craze Army member, and thank you for the super chat. Okay. Scott, thank you for the $20. He says, enjoy this, people. Jaded for a decade. We're riding this wave all the way to Columbus. Okay, whoa. Scott is drinking the Kool-Aid. Thank you for the support, Scott. I don't know if I condone the Kool-Aid drinking, saying we're going to be riding the winning streak all the way to Columbus. I don't want to be that guy who comes on here and is like, you know what? I'm looking that far ahead. You've got Purdue next. What a joke. I'll talk about that in my video this week. What a joke. I said Nebraska would lose to Purdue in my preseason prediction. What am I talking about? Okay. Anyway, who's after Purdue? Rutgers, Indiana. Those are 2 really good teams. I watched Indiana today. Put it down on UCLA on the road. They could be a problem. They could be 4, or is it going to be 5-1? They could be 5-1, 6-0, hosting Nebraska. I think that's the week before Ohio State. Yeah, they're the game before, if they have a bye week in between, I think. I don't know. Doesn't matter. The point is, I'm going to focus. People always tell me this in the comments, like, don't get, overexcited. Let's focus on one game at a time. All right, I'm not a player. I'm not a coach. So I don't have to focus on one game at a time. I can look outwards. I can look to see the future, and I can try and predict it and project what's going to happen because I'm a fan. I'm not in that locker room with them. If I'm a player, I totally agree with you. But I get to just talk about what I want to talk about. Same with you. You could talk about this too, and it's not going to change the team. Team's going to be all good. They're going to do their thing no matter what. You and me having this conversation right now on a YouTube Live isn't going to change how they see it. But I'm going to take the stance that you in the comments usually tell me, which is stop looking forward. Let's focus on one game at a time, because right now Nebraska's going to be in for a battle next week. Illinois is not coming in light. Purdue's not going to come in light. Neither is Rutgers. I mean, it's going to be back-to-back-to-back heavy hitters. This is Big Ten play now. And tonight told us Big Ten play is going to look a lot different from what we saw with UTEP and with Colorado. Nebraska's got to adjust. They got to come out and they got to hit hard. They got to be up at the line of scrimmage. They got to make sure that they're tackling those running QBs. I'll tell you what, Purdue is going to have a quarterback who can move. Rutgers does have a quarterback who can move. Who did I say? Indiana. Or Rourke can kind of move. But the point is, they're all going to have some athletic ability similar to what Dune had tonight. And Nebraska's going to have to wrap them up because they didn't tackle that well in the first half this game. I think even Rule called it out. There was something that maybe I saw on Twitter where Rule said something at halftime about how they weren't tackling well. He didn't need to say it. We all saw it. Defense needed to swarm harder. They needed to hit harder. They needed to make sure that that team was punished and paying their dues to get every yard they gained. And it didn't feel like in the first half they were paying for it enough. That's just my take. Anyway, Scott, I'm going to enjoy this win with you. Don't worry. After I get off the stream tonight, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to soak. I'm going to think to myself, damn, Nebraska is 3-0. They are ranked in the top 25, and they will be ranked in the top 25 tomorrow. And I'm praying that next week goes well, that Nebraska gets all their best pieces back. Micah Mazuka, Jamari Butler, obviously Bayer came back in the second half today, and Nebraska stays healthy after this game, and they can go on a run just like you're talking about. Okay. Chance, thank you for the $5 super chat. He says 20 points allowed in 3 games, from close losses to big dubs. I saw that stat pop up. What was it? The last time they allowed this few was 2008, 2009. Was it that season? 2005. No. It was 2005. They allowed 16 points a game through the first 3 games, I believe. And now Nebraska, this is the fewest since then, 20 points in 3 games. I mean, it doesn't matter who the competition is. The fact that our second team defense is pulling up and putting stops out in what was it, 3rd and 5 or something. It was 3rd and 5 or 4th and 5, and they stopped them twice. Once with a pass play, once with a run play. Those were the type of plays where teams would, backdoor cover, if you're talking gambling terms. Teams would come in and they'd score on Nebraska at the end. And today that didn't happen. And throughout the game, the Black Shirts, they were in control. It was a bend don't break day. So they would let teams get a bunch of yards. They would flirt with the midfield, and then Nebraska would finally put their foot on the throat and make sure they didn't get past them and get into the red zone. So that was positive that they only came away with 1 field goal. It's hard for me to complain, right? Because I realize how appreciative I should be and how happy I should be. But I also am realistic, and I say, well, Matt Rule says he wants this team to be a championship contender, and the team expects to be. Well, then if we're going to talk about being a championship contender, and we're not setting that expectation bar at 7.5 wins like Vegas claims Nebraska should win, then we're going to have some hard conversations. We're going to have to talk about the truth here. We're going to have to talk about what needs to change, what needs to improve, and why today was, not all flowers, like some people would who look at the final score. If you're a casual fan, you just go and look and say, oh, Nebraska won 34-3, no problem. It's like, okay, well, look into it a little bit. Wasn't as impressive as what you'd expect out of a Nebraska football team who has been getting as much hype as they have over these past 2 weeks. Chance, thanks for the $5 super chat. Ike, thank you for the $10. Thank you for being a Corn Craze Army member. He says, I think Rule was trying to not show his hand before Big Ten play, but hats off to Nebraska. Hats off to Northern Iowa for their effort. The way they ran the ball is worrisome. Yeah, I think that a team like Illinois is going to look to what Northern Iowa did today and say, wow, imagine if Northern Iowa had our players, if they had our receivers, if they had our speed, our quarterback, if they had everything we had going on, Northern Iowa would have beat Nebraska tonight. I'm confident in saying that. I would have said that if tonight's performance matched up next week with what they're going to do against Illinois, then I would say Illinois would beat Nebraska. So they're going to have to step up. That's all I'm saying. In regards of not showing his hand, I don't know if I agree with that. I felt like Nebraska really brought it out. I felt like they ran some I wouldn't call them trick plays, but they ran some misdirections. They ran some zone read. They ran some little sweeps around the end with Ja'Cory Barney. I'm trying to think what else they did. They had a couple of good pass plays that went deep. It felt like Nebraska was working. It didn't feel like they were just saying, okay, we're going to run downhill, we're going to throw short passes, hope for the best, and move on from there. I felt like they were running plays, and they were running plays that they're going to run in the Big Ten. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it felt like, the playbook was open tonight. And there were some good plays out of it. Some misses, but some really good plays out of it, especially in the run game. I was really happy with the run game at times. Wink, thank you for being a member for 20 months. He says, are we playing conservative to Air Park Big Ten play? And that's what I just spoke to. You asked your question at the perfect time so I could double down on it. My Lee, thank you for being a member. Thank you for the $10 super chat. He says, I don't understand why our defense couldn't account for QB scrambles. You and I had a lot of rush yards by their QBs. Hope they can clean it up. Let me pull that up real quick. Where's my clear chat? Oh, it's right here. So you and I is what it sounds like. You and I had 49 rushing yards from Aiden Dune, their starting quarterback. And then I think this Matthew Sheckelman was their backup, yeah? Yeah. So Matthew Sheckelman ran for another 10. So they had 13 carries for 59 yards. And they only ran for 139. That's like 40% of their yards. I'm not good at math. I'm just, throwing numbers out there. But I felt like Nebraska at times, they were paying attention to the quarterback. And then there were times where they just all sold out to take down the running back. And it was evident when, I don't remember what the situation was. I don't even remember what quarter it was. It must have been in the first half. I think it was Nash or Ty sold out to take down the running back. And then the quarterback got loose because they were all focused on taking out the running back. And I think it resulted in a first down. And I thought at that moment, like, why are they selling out trying to stop the running back when they know they've got to stop the QB as well? And I think as the game went along, they got better at it. But they had to make some halftime adjustments to realize, these guys are going to run it a little bit more on us with the QB, and we got to figure out how to stop it. Maybe the assumption was these two running backs are so big, bruising, and they're, quick enough to get upfield that we've got to put all of our attention on that. And then if we have one QB spy or one guy outside to read them, like the defensive end, or who, who was reading a lot was Gifford. Gifford was coming up to the line, and I think his job was to read a little bit too. So I don't know. I think I'm just trying to think who has a really good running quarterback that we're going to face. Hudson Card can move, but he's not like a dual threat. You know what I mean? He's going to be one. Altmaier can move again, not a dual threat. Hopefully Nebraska doesn't encounter too many quarterbacks who are going to want to run as much as this guy did. And if they do, then at least they have this experience to learn from, and they'll be better prepared and better in position to stop it. Because up to this point, they haven't had to defend against a running quarterback. The quarterbacks at UTEP didn't run as much, or Nebraska's defensive line was just so dominant that day it didn't really matter. But UTEP did like to throw up more than these guys. These guys definitely like to run. Husker Nation, thank you for gifting 20 Corn Craze memberships. I appreciate you a ton. Garcia, thank you for being an Army member. He says people complaining about a 31-point win for a team that hasn't even had a winning season in years is wild to me. Look, I told you already. This is ridiculous. I told you before I started talking and ranting that I have issues. So I've acknowledged my problems, okay? And everyone in the chat, I'm sure, acknowledges their issues too. But like I said, this is where psychopath Nebraska fans come to. This isn't like a casual hangout. This is Corn Craze. This is literally crazy about Nebraska, okay? So we're going to microanalyze. We're going to get crazy into the details. And if Matt Rule tells us this is what our expectation is, which he has now dozens of times over press conferences, over the Chasing 3 videos, he has said, this is what we expect. This is where we're going. This is what we want to do. When you go and get a 5-star quarterback who, walks the way that Dylan walks and plays the way he does, and you have the defense, obviously, from last year that came back and has looked dominant up to this point, that you're going to set some unrealistic expectations. It's natural. We're college football fans. We're Nebraska fans. Since when do Nebraska fans set realistic expectations? I've tried my best. Point being here, C. Garcia, is that, yes, we're getting into the weeds a bit, and we might be a little bit ridiculous about all these things where I don't want to call them complaints. We're just recognizing what should be corrected or what should be improved upon if Nebraska wants to get to 9 wins or 10 wins, right? But we all appreciate a win. We're all going to be happy tonight. We're all going to be celebrating. Not one person here is complaining. So I don't want to use the word complaint. I think you're using the wrong word. No one's complaining. We're just acknowledging. let's switch those terms. Complaining for acknowledging. I've acknowledged Nebraska's struggles tonight. I have not complained about Nebraska's struggles tonight. Keeping it pushing. I'm going back through. We got bumped down to the bottom. Husker Nation, thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, it was nice to see Heinrich Haarberg in on some of those packages. Tons of cleanup to be had. So Haarberg comes in, plays running back, plays quarterback right out the gate. I think he caught a pass. I mean, Haarberg showed that he's versatile, that he can do a lot of things. He had the gloves on out the gate. He finished, here's his stat line. Shout out to Haarberg getting in the game. 3 of 3 for 34 yards. From a run perspective, he had 3 for 7, and then he had a catch. Haarberg had 1 catch for 8 yards. So the fact that he played a role is exciting. We wanted to see that. We finally got to. It felt like in these first 2 games, the opportunities just didn't really present themselves. Obviously, the fourth quarter of the UTEP game did. But tonight was nice to see him more mixed in. I heard the announcers keep saying that Matt Rule doesn't want to say that he has a package for Haarberg. He just has the offense and he fits in and plays a role in the offense, which I totally respect and understand. But it is interesting to think, well, Haarberg played many roles. Receiver, quarterback, rusher. I mean, he kind of just moves around, which I think is awesome. And it's a nice weapon for Nebraska to have. At the same time, as much as you want to use that weapon, as much as you want to get him on the field and make sure he's productive, since he's one of the best athletes on this offense, you've got to be cautious because anything can happen with injuries. And we don't want something to happen to QB1 and then, be like, well, we've got Haarberg, but that dude's banged up too. And now we got to move on to Gramstad or whoever, right? So just a thought, but I do agree. Good vibes. Happy that we got to see Haarberg tonight. Mr. McHoss, thank you for being a member, and thank you for the $10 super chat. 1-0 this week, but to me, the team didn't pass the eye test. We want perfection, and we just aren't quite there yet, day by day. And I think that's the beauty of this whole thing, right? Matt Rule didn't come to Nebraska to flip us quick and to get us to the playoff or to make this a national championship contending team. Just didn't. Matt Rule came to Nebraska to build a program back. And when he got here, he said, I think this team's in a better position than Temple or Baylor when I took those programs over. But he didn't say, I think this team's ready to win now, and I think they're ready to win big now. He said they're ready to win games, but he didn't say they're ready to go and compete for playoff spots, right? And I think because of the hype of this year and because of how quick things got started, like I said earlier, we just got overcome with positivity. And yes, I agree with you. They didn't pass the eye test from an extremist point of view. And I will consider myself a bit of an extremist in terms of expecting, 9-10 wins this year. But in terms of where Nebraska's been, where Nebraska should be, where Matt Rule has them, Nebraska did pass the eye test. You know what Nebraska did tonight? They did what Scott Frost couldn't. They finished. They won. They didn't get into a battle that they couldn't compete in against a lower tier school who would have beaten Nebraska teams of the past. So shout out Nebraska for living up to what Matt Rule had planned. That's all I can say. Jonathan, thank you for the $5 super chat. How do you think they will do against Indiana? Because I am worried. So like Nebraska, Indiana has played an underwhelming schedule. They played UCLA on the road. UCLA is, right now, they're fighting with Purdue as the worst team in the Big Ten. They lost to Hawaii. They got beat down by Indiana tonight. They don't look very good. I'm going to have to go back and watch some more of that Hawaii or that UCLA Indiana game because I just saw some highlights. I flipped to it a couple times during Nebraska, but my attention was on this Northern Iowa game. I am not worried about any team on Nebraska's schedule up until Ohio State. I do think that me saying that does not mean I think Nebraska is going to be undefeated going into Ohio State. What that means is I am not concerned that Nebraska doesn't have the talent or the coaching edge to match up with any of those teams and take it down to the wire and win those games by 3 points or 7 points. I think Nebraska is going to be competitive and could win, should win every one of those games. Worried is a weird term, right? Because if we're saying worried is games are going to be close, then you need to be very worried. You need to be extremely concerned right now because every game from here on out, I struggle to include Purdue in this conversation, but we're going to anyway. Every game from here on out is going to be a sweat. When Nebraska gets into that field, when Nebraska walks out there and you turn on the TV, you will never be comfortable. At some point you will be comfortable in some of those games because Nebraska will separate themselves. They will look really good and they'll dominate some of those teams. But at the beginning of the game, the spreads will be close. The competition will be fierce. They will be pissed off and they will want to beat Nebraska. Keep in mind, Nebraska has a target on their back. They are a top 25 team. Do you remember what it was like when Nebraska was an underdog and a non-ranked opponent playing against the ranked teams, playing against the teams who were expected to win? How much more fire they came out with, how excited we were as fans to watch those games play out. Nebraska's got a target on their back. Every game's going to be a fight, and you should be very worried going forward. At least if we're defining worried in the way I just did. Jackson, thank you for the $10 super chat. Not sure if you talked about it yet. Man, did Carter Nelson look good? Get him more touches, especially Barney Jr. Yeah, two different guys, right? You got Barney Jr., who we already know his role in this team is to be a wide receiver one, to take handoffs out the backfield, to take those jet sweeps or toss passes, to catch him downfield, to catch him short over the middle, make room and find holes and see if there's a way for him to break down the defense and obviously just catch a little bit of space on the outside, because if he does, no one's going to catch him. Carter Nelson plays a different role. He's more of a big body receiver, a little bit like a tight end, but they use him in a receiver role. He is faster than a tight end, though. A little bit smaller, too, but he's a true freshman. He's got some time to put some weight on. Carter Nelson is going to find more ways into the offense. I don't know how quick. Like tonight, did they force him in because they knew it was a lesser opponent? Or did they force him in because they want to use him more going forward? That's a good question. He's already played in 2 games. I'm assuming he's not redshirting at this point. I mean, he could, but I don't think they would redshirt him. Ja'Cory, obviously, we know his role is just going to continue to grow. So, yeah, I think they both look great. I was really excited to see them both out there. And I think tonight's positive takeaway, at least in the first half, was seeing so many young guys go out there and make moves early in the game. I mean, the first touchdown drive was led by 3 true freshmen. How awesome is that? Not many teams around the country are doing that. Miguel, thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, some say there wasn't the same energy or urgency as last week, but let's look at it this way. We are only going to continue to develop and grow GBR, and that's the bottom line here. My closing statements, I'm not leaving yet, but my closing statements, if I had some, would be that yes, we're not using that word complain. I had my thoughts. And although Nebraska didn't live up to the level of play that they had last week against Colorado, there were still a lot of positive takeaways, and there are still going to be ways for them to improve, which is the best thing about this sport. We get to watch the team evolve. We get to watch these players get better day by day. We get to watch the coaching staff grow, and ultimately, we're trying to build towards perfection, build towards a Big Ten champion contender team first, then a national champion contender team. Today, we're not there yet, and that's okay. This is year 2 of a Matt Rhule rebuild from a team who was in beyond despair. They were broken. People were saying that Nebraska could never win a national championship again. Nebraska could never be a contender. Nebraska needs to reset their expectations for what this team can accomplish in the future, because the old way of football is gone and Nebraska will not be revived. That's all nonsense. It's proven to be nonsense through these first couple of weeks. Nebraska is going to get back. I'm not going to say they're back yet, but it's all about the process. Enjoy it. Miguel, thank you for your comment, because I agree with you. Tony, he says, are you going to be in Lincoln for the 400 sellout? No, I will not be in Lincoln again this year. I don't have a plan to, at least. If Nebraska made the playoff, I mean, then we could talk about it. But no, I'm going to be at home, and I'm going to do a live stream right after that game for the 400 sellout. Cuba, thank you for the $10 super chat. Not complaining, just concerning. I'm hoping that we get better at second half adjustments. We won't always be winning in the second half. Love your content, GBR. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the super chat. And I agree with you. Nebraska's got to put their foot on the gas, and they got to get leads early in the game. I really do feel confident that tonight was just, it was a letdown spot. It was a team who Nebraska wasn't as pumped up for. And when you come off the emotional high that Nebraska experienced last week against Colorado, it's really hard to match the intensity, the energy, the excitement, the passion. I mean, even for me as a fan, do you think I prepared and sat down on my couch tonight the same way I prepared for Colorado last week? Hell no. So how would I expect the players to do the exact same thing? The feelings, just think of the emotions you had last week, right? And how, we were overcome with a billion emotions throughout that whole, I would say the whole week. For that 5 or 6 days leading up to the Colorado game, hell, even in the summer, the emotions I felt towards that environment, towards that game, towards the players in that moment, towards watching it, just towards enjoying being a spectator, it couldn't be matched. It could be, but it couldn't be matched this week. So I'm sure the players went through that as well. So let's call it a letdown spot. And let's say that Nebraska, because they played without some of their starters right out the gate, and they wanted to work some different players in, It looked worse than we expected it to, but they still won, and Matt Rule did his job. Thank you, Cuba. Turner, thank you for the $10 super chat. He says, it feels good to win the games we should. I took my dad to his first game at Memorial Stadium versus Troy in 2018. We know how that one went. Just didn't feel like Nebraska football back then. Yeah, it really didn't feel like Nebraska football back then. It felt like, I always target and poke fun of Baylor. The reason I do is because I had these high hopes for Dave Aranda to get it fixed up. And then the last couple seasons, it just kind of felt like, after they had a positive season back in, 2022? Whatever it was. 2021? I don't remember. Point is, yeah, Nebraska felt like they weren't a blue blood program. They felt like they were just kind of one of these mediocre Big 12 or Pac-12 schools. And it felt like that for a really long time. So thank God Nebraska got that out of their system, and they're actually competing at a high level. And I'm hoping that you can take your dad to another game that is a little bit more exciting, and then Nebraska will win. There are a lot of them on the schedule because Nebraska should win every single game at home this year. Cuba, thank you for becoming a part of the Corn Craze Army. I appreciate the support. I'm scrolling up through chat, guys. I'm not going to miss your super chats. Jaden, thank you for the $20 super chat. He says, dude, let's talk about Florida State. I feel bad for their fan base. Freaking DJ Ugda Booty. Okay, so look, Florida State and Florida are the new Nebraska, right? Florida should fire their coach. Florida State shouldn't fire their coach, but they got to change their philosophy. They got to change their recruiting plan. They hit the portal super hard. Obviously, it worked last year. It did not work this time around. Memphis went in there, kicked their ass today. I mean, it wasn't a big score, but Memphis dominated them. The Florida State offense could not score on the Memphis defense. Let me tell you this. Memphis's defense is not the superhero on that team. It's the offense. It's their quarterback, Hennigan. It's their running back. I mean, Memphis coming into Florida State. Keep in mind, Florida State's going through some stadium renovations. They can't get full capacity in the stadium, so maybe people were a little down about that. Oh, or maybe they were down about an 0-2 start after being a projected top 10 team. Whatever it was, Florida State's down bad. It could be worse. Thank God Nebraska didn't get DJ Uiagalelei, and thank God Nebraska's got Dylan Raiola, and we don't got to worry about those problems, because guess what? We've had to worry about them in the past, and I'm just glad it's them and not us. Florida. Oh my God. Florida has one of the hardest schedules in the entire country. The expectation was that Florida had I don't want to call it an easy slate in the beginning. They had an easier slate than what they were going to face down the stretch. They started off with Miami. Obviously, Miami ended up being a little bit better than people expected them to be. They look like a national championship contending program. Then you got Texas A&M, mess. Texas A&M beat them up today. I mean, Miami came back towards the end, garbage time points, but yeah, if they couldn't beat Miami if they couldn't beat Texas A&M at home, what's Florida's outlook for the rest of the season? Here's the thing. Tony White is going to become available at the end of the year. And there are going to be some big programs who are looking for coaches. What I'm most interested in this situation is, does Tony White get looks for powerhouse programs, or does he have to take a transition job? And when I say a transition job, I'm talking about a place that you go to temporarily before you get the Nebraska, the Florida, the Texas, the USC. I don't know. Matt Rule's culture, Matt Rule's process, Matt Rule's recruiting ability, the defense turnaround, so much positive has come out of these past two seasons that I wouldn't be surprised to see Tony White be getting big offers out the gate, but we'll see. Just a thought. Interesting. Florida down bad, Nebraska not. I know there are a couple more super chats here I don't want to miss. Jonathan, thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, point prediction for Illinois. I'm thinking 24-17. You know, I haven't even seen the spread for that game yet. I'm guessing Nebraska's going to be a 7-point favorite. I would think Nebraska's going to win that one and score around 20. Maybe Illinois. I don't know how their defense is. I'm going to be honest with you. I've only watched some highlights from them. I haven't really explored that team. I'm going to have to tomorrow. I would think Nebraska is somewhere in the 23-24 range, like you're saying, and they're going to hold Illinois to 13 or less. That's how I would see it going. I just think Nebraska's defense is going to come extremely fired up, and I don't know that Illinois has the offensive firepower that they have shown these past couple weeks against a defense of this caliber. Kansas's defense has completely fallen off. Kansas lost to UNLV last night, if you didn't see that, and it was a joke. It was embarrassing. Illinois beating Kansas is nowhere near as impressive as it was 7 days ago. They played CMU tonight. CMU... nothing. They got Jim McElwain as a coach, but nothing. And then before that, they played like Lindenwood University or some school from the FCS, and they beat up on them. So Illinois, in my opinion, is a better and more improved team than they were last year, but Nebraska is as well. We saw what happened with the Nebraska-Illinois game last year. It was in Illinois. This time it'll be at home for Nebraska. I just think the matchup favors Nebraska. They have better players in the trenches, and that's where Illinois would usually thrive. So, yeah, I think Nebraska is good for a 10-point win. We'll see. I'm not making an official prediction yet. Just a thought before I even get into my research. Matt, thank you for the $5 super chat. Thank you for being a member. He says, is it just me, or does it seem like our receivers really struggle creating separation one-on-one? Running backs don't seem to have breakaway speed. So one running back, Dowdell, does not have breakaway speed. He is a power runner. He's like 6'2", 220 some pounds. His specialty is between the tackles, downhill, and just run dudes over. Emmett Johnson, Ramir Johnson have more breakaway speed. We saw Emmett with a big run tonight. We saw Ramir with a catch out of the backfield, or a couple out of the backfield that went for some yards. I mean, last week against Colorado, we had a 50-yard touchdown run that got called back for a hold. Regardless, Nebraska does have players who fit that role, but when you look at Irvin, when you look at Dowdell, they don't. I don't know about the receivers creating separation. I do think they struggle at times, like tonight with Jalen Lloyd on the interception play, or what was the other one? I think Nayor had one where he didn't have enough separation. Sorry, about to sneeze. Anyway, I don't remember what the play was, but there were a couple times where I know what you're talking about. I just don't know if that's a problem or not. I do know the problem last week that did look better this time around was the receivers were blocking better this time. And obviously the competition is different and they put more of an emphasis on it. But that is one thing Nebraska's got to clean up. They got to make sure their receivers are blocking because as you guys saw in like the Aaron Murray breakdown where he breaks down Dylan Raiola's play as a quarterback, you saw plenty of receivers missing their blocks, which was obviously a problem for getting explosive runs downfield. Gary, thank you for being a member. Thank you for the $20 super chat. I appreciate the support. What's your prediction for Nebraska versus Illinois? You know, I already gave a prediction, so I'll give a different one. You know, I think Nebraska's going to come out, and I think they're going to score extremely quickly. I think they're going to want to make a statement. I think that I don't want to say they're going to be embarrassed about today. I don't want to say that they're going to feel like they let the fans down today or let themselves down today, but I do think Dylan's pissed off about throwing a pick. I do think Dylan's pissed off about not scoring when they were in the red zone twice and having to settle for field goals. I think that's going to eat him alive. The type of player that Dylan Raiola is, he expects more out of himself, especially against a team like Northern Iowa. So he's going to be pissed off. And Nebraska's going to come with a really good game plan. And I think they're going to score out the gate immediately. And I think they're going to put pressure on those dudes next. I think that the defense is obviously going to smother their offense right away. And I don't know if Illinois is going to be able to compete the entire way through. I think that they're going to come out fiery early. And they're going to have some big plays. But Nebraska's going to be a different beast next week because of what happened tonight. The same way we have questions, Dylan's going to be in bed tonight in his head like, what the hell went wrong? I promise you, he's that type of player. That's what makes him elite. So that's my prediction for Illinois. Nebraska comes out fiery. Chang, thank you for the 150. What is it? Thailand? I can't remember. Taiwanese something. Honestly, I just feel frustrated when I watch the game. Next week, they begin facing a more physical Big Ten opponent. Anyway, a win is a win. Victory is always preferable to defeat. There's no doubt about that. At least we don't have to. I mean, imagine how pissed off we'd be with a loss tonight. Imagine how frustrated you'd be sitting there looking in the mirror like, God damn it. Nebraska just lost to Northern Iowa. They had this hot streak going. Now the whole season's done. Could you imagine? So we didn't get anywhere near that. So yes, we're asking questions. We're expecting more, but we're going to bask in this. We're going to enjoy this. Nebraska is the number 23 team in the country. Maybe they're number 22 tomorrow. I don't know. I don't care where they're ranked. I'm just happy they are ranked because guess what? Nebraska is a part of the conversation. One more thing to add to that in terms of a part of the conversation. You know, Dylan Raiola keeps getting talked about for being Patrick Mahomes Jr. and all the nonsense. And they keep showing him before the game where he's jumping up and down doing the Mahomes like pregame ritual. I love it because at this point, I know Dylan's trolling. They're just all these people, ESPN, Fox, College Football, Bleacher Report. They all just post this stuff up for clicks and for views. They know it's going to piss people off and incite riots in the comment section. So they post up Dylan, they troll, they make sure everybody has their own comments and things to say about it, and they just keep regurgitating the same content. How many times have you seen on Instagram the same shit over and over and over and over? It's just trolling at this point. I hope Dylan just throws fire or throws gasoline on the flame and gets this fire going because it's funny to see Nebraska so relevant when you have all these other fan bases who are like, why is this shitty Nebraska team relevant? They aren't even good. Just wait. You haven't seen anything yet because Nebraska has beat up on small-time teams, so you haven't watched them. All you've seen is a few touchdown passes from Dylan Raiola. All you've seen or heard is a bunch of these analysts like Kirk Herbstreit and Joel Klatt talking about, oh, Nebraska could be building back. Nebraska could potentially be a Big Ten contender this year. Oh, Nebraska's a top 5 team in the Big Ten. And then you're sitting there at home like, what? Nebraska sucks. I've been watching them for the last 10 years. They've been garbage, and they're not all of a sudden better. Just wait. You casuals have no idea what's coming. Now, everybody in this chat knows because we've been watching. We know the vibes, but the casual college football fans don't. And I know that to be true because all the casual college football fans that I'm friends with, they'll text me all the time. Oh, look, Nebraska's ranked. This is nonsense. Why are they ranked? Oh, hype, Matt Rule. They don't even know because they don't watch the games. They're like, oh, well, they played UTEP. You have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. You didn't watch Chasing 3, did you, brother? You didn't watch Chasing 3, and that's the first mistake you made. Casuals need to start watching Chasing 3 if they want insight, actually. The Big Meatball, thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, Connor, is Mazuka going to be kicked off the team? Rule said they held him off and is still on the team right now. I know nothing about it. I saw, just like most people, right before the game, it said Micah Mazuka will not start tonight. And then I saw something else where someone posted and said something like he came out. I don't even like repeating this because I don't know if this is true or not. This is just something I saw somewhere. It said Mazuka came off the field last week, got in a fight with Donovan Raiola, and then after that he got like temporarily suspended. That's why he's not playing tonight. I don't know anything, so I'm the wrong person to ask right now. I hope not because I don't want to see Mazuka out. Mazuka's a stud, and he's obviously a huge piece of that offensive line. He's an NFL player. Okay, thank you for the $2. I can't remember how to say it. The Shellin. You told Sheila. Nope. You sent me the pronunciation. I can't remember it. Thank you for the $2 super chat, though. I thought Banks would be a better player. You know, I think Banks is a legit number 2 wide receiver at Nebraska. And I said that before the season. I think I made like a video where I talked about the depth chart. I'm trying to think what I did. It was a depth chart video, and I went through the receiving core, and I said Isaiah Nayor is going to be Nebraska's number 1 target. He's going to be their deep threat. He's the more balanced of the two. Banks is more of a possession guy, less after the catch. I feel like up to this point, he's lived up to that hype. He's lived up to what I expected. He looks exactly like who he was at Wake Forest, right? So I don't know if I expected him to be a better player. I do think that you're probably referring to him not getting separation on some plays and maybe some drops, but you know, he's going to get better with Dylan hitting him in better spots, right? There have been times where Dylan has amazing throws out in front of guys or in positions where no one else can catch it. And then there are other times where Dylan throws it behind a guy while he's on the run this direction, throws it here and kind of slows up the route. But, you know, I would give it time. I think Banks is still good. What was his stat line tonight? Let's check out the receiver stat line. Sorry. Receivers tonight. Jalen Lloyd had 1 for 59. Should have had 2. Carter Nelson had 4 for 48. Emmett Johnson, 3 for 43. Emmett had that big one for 24 yards. Emmett looked good tonight. Emmett's a stud running back. Isaiah Nayor, 2 for 35. Barney, 3 for 29. Ramir, 2 for 28. Love Ramir. He's one of Nebraska's secret weapons. And then Jamal Banks only had 1 for 13. I feel like he had more than one target, though. I don't remember off the top of my head. But I do feel like Banks had more than one target. So maybe that's what you're referring to. He's dropping balls. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to remember all this information watching the game and then come here and do it all. But I wouldn't put too high of expectations on these guys, right? It's early on, and they're going to get better as they gel together. The one guy who I do have extremely high expectations for, though, is Isaiah Nayor. You can dog him if he has a bad day, because Isaiah needs to be an NFL receiver. Doug, thank you for the $10 super chat. One thing I noticed about our D is that we can't get penetration fast enough. If I'm correct, no sacks, but good nonetheless. Raiola humbled a little bit with an interception, though not his fault. Passion is a plus. So I would argue that it was his fault, the interception. I don't know if that's controversial or not, but in that situation, he had to lead Jalen a little bit more, and Jalen needed to beat his man, and Jalen didn't. That guy was way too up on him. So, wait, did we say... Yeah, you said it wasn't his fault. Yes, okay, so I'm arguing it is his fault. Sorry. So if he would have led his man, that DB shouldn't have been able to catch that ball underneath. And Jalen, if he would have beat his man by more, then Raiola could have aired it out over the top to him, and then there would have never been a question. So I would argue it is his fault. That's the first thing. Sacks on defense. John Bullock had 1. Let's see here. John Bullock with 1. He had a tackle for loss. Isaac had a tackle for loss. That was it, though. You're right. One sack. Only one. Crazy. Here's the thing. They got back there plenty of times. Let me pull your comment back up. You said that they couldn't get penetration fast enough. I felt like they got back there, but they had to read two guys. They had to read the quarterback and they had to read the running back. And because they had to read both, there were times where the defense would be in the backfield, but one guy slipped through the cracks, the guy who had the ball, right? And that's what created some bigger plays for them where the guy got into the second level. Obviously, Nebraska was able to bring him down, and they didn't have that many big plays. Let's see. They had a 21-yard pass, a 16-yard pass, a couple 18s. Then their biggest run went for 11 yards. I mean, they never really had a big breakaway run play. So Nebraska's defense did get back there, but they weren't getting to the point where they could make tackles in the backfield, and that's why they only had a couple tackles for loss. They had 3 tackles for loss and 1 sack. So I agree with you to some degree. Let's see. One of the announcers was saying Dylan's a Heisman candidate. Calm down there. You know, it's the Big Ten Network. They're a little bit biased, so they want to feed the ego of Nebraska fans. And so because they want to do that, they're going to say all the things that Nebraska fans are saying online, which Nebraska fans aren't actually saying Dylan's a Heisman candidate. But, you know, these guys aren't Kirk Herbstreit. They're not, what's his name? Like, I'm trying to think of the big announcers, the good ones. I don't even know off the top of my head. I don't know. I haven't watched enough games where Nebraska's getting called by the big boys. It's always the local guys of the Big Ten. So they're going to feed our egos, you know. Nate, thank you for the $2 super chat. Thank you for being a member. He says, let's enjoy the rise of Nebraska. And I think that is the bottom line tonight. Nebraska had some really big moments. Another one, I have a note right here. It talks about John Bullock. And John Bullock had an amazing play where he batted the ball. I think it was in negative territory. It was in Iowa, or Iowa State's own 30-yard line or something. And Bullock came around and he swatted the ball. It almost was an interception. Then he had another play by Gifford, who had an amazing tackle. He had another one by Marquise Buford in the end zone. What did he do? He was running to the corner, I think. The receiver just got past the pylon, and then Marquise turned. Right when he turned, ball's right there, and he was able to bat it down. So there were a lot of really good individual performances tonight, and there were moments where you're like, wow, that looked like an NFL play. These guys are freaking studs, you know? So I'm going to enjoy it with you because I think there are a lot of positive takeaways. But I'm also going to, like I said tonight, I'm going to analyze. I'm going to figure out where Nebraska could improve because if Matt Rule and the team is expecting more, then, you know, I'm going to criticize where we have to because there are things that we all expect as a unit. I mean, as the Nebraska family unit, from the players to the coaches to the fan base, you know, we all see the same things. And I promise you, they're going to be saying the exact same things we are in the film room tomorrow. I promise you. Surf Bogey, thank you for the $5 super chat. Thank you for being a member. He says, I feel a lot better about this year than last for sure. I feel like we can at least compete again. Okay, that's a crazy comment. You feel a lot better about this year than last year for sure. Come on, it's night and day. It's not even the same. It's different worlds. Last year, it felt like the sky was falling. It felt like we tapped out halfway through the season. It was done. It felt like we didn't have a quarterback who could protect the ball. It felt just so morbid. Now there's eternal optimism. I mean, all of us feel like Nebraska's back on track, right? So that's a crazy comment to me. Of course you feel that way. You know, I think the fact that we can all enjoy this and that we can all actually sit through an entire season together and not worry about, well, when is it time to tap out? I think that's the most exciting feeling. We get 4 months of football together, whereas in the past we would only get 2 months. Because after 2 months, it's like, all right, well, we made it through September. Half of October was okay, but now we're in mid-October. The season's already over for Nebraska. We're going to lose most of our games anyway. Nebraska's just going to talk about hiring a new coach or figuring out who to fill the holes with in the transfer portal. So what's the point of this team? So I'm just glad for you, Surf Bogey, that you get to enjoy it all the way through. And I know that's future forecasting quite a bit because anything could happen and Nebraska could, you know, take a twisted turn. But for now, the way I see things playing out, I feel like because of our expectations being relatively low to the talent and coaching level of this team, I think we're for a really fun season. So I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad that you've been a part of the show for so long because I see you comment on a bunch of the videos. You're always supporting. Evanception, thank you for the $5 super chat. Thank you for being a member. He says, Dylan over under 2,500 yards and 25 TDs. Love that the young guys are getting involved. You know, the 2,500 yards I feel really good about. That'd be like, 200 yards a game, I think. 250 yards a game, I guess. 250 less than. It'd be around 220 a game, I guess. I mean, I could do the math. I don't care, though. So let's say it's 220 yards a game. I think that's realistic, and it's going to happen. Tonight, he threw for 250 tonight. He threw for 220 a game the last two. So that puts him at 246, 650, 690. So he's at about 700 yards total. Yeah, he's on track for 2,500s. I would say over. The 25 TDs part, I don't know. Let me see how many TDs he has. Dylan Raiola stats. We'll pull this up together. Dylan Raiola stats on the year. He's at 3 touchdowns in 2024. You know, getting 25, that'd be 22 more. He's only got 10 more games. That'd be 2. Yeah, I think that I'd go under on the touchdowns. Nebraska's a running team. Nebraska likes to run the ball, and I think most of their scores are going to come in the red zone, so more likely to be runs. So we'll go over yards, under touchdowns, but right now, 42 of 57, 73.7% completion. That's pretty incredible. I'm really happy with that. If you had told me before the season that was his stat line for the first 3 games, I would have told you, damn, Nebraska's in for a really good year. And that's where we're at right now. We're all confident that Nebraska's in for a really good year. Doug, thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, I still feel that this year is ours to take. I agree. My bet is still there, 8-0. I have faith that the Ohio State will be our big upset win, which is overdue. Let's go GBR. You know, I'm still rooting for you. If you win that, what was it, plus 4,000 odds to get to 8-0? Whatever it is, I really want you to win, because not only do I want you to win for you, I want you to win for me, because the vibes on this channel, if Nebraska ends up pulling an upset of that caliber, oh my God, it would be nuts. So go Nebraska. Let's get to 8-0. That'd be a vibe. Tyler, thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, to me, all we have to do is work on penalties and run defense, and I have confidence we can fix it. We are to vet, not to, and Dylan, he will be on his wide receivers. Okay, I don't understand that line, but to me, all we have to do is work on the penalties and run D. Yeah, I think Nebraska did have a few sloppy penalties today. I don't remember what happened on offense, but I do know the defense had a couple encroachments. Who was it? MJ Sherman had one. It was an offsides. Someone else had one, I feel like, earlier than that. And then obviously the Nayor play. And then I think there was a potential targeting that got overturned. That was good. Regardless, I think the run D's fine. I think tonight was a little bit more confusing because they had to monitor 2 players. They had to monitor the quarterback, they had to monitor the running back, and because they were worried about both, sometimes the running back slipped through and got to the second level. But the beauty in it was the second level made their tackles. They got better in the second half, and they made sure that no one got loose. The most yards a guy went for on one single play from the running back position was 11 yards. Shout out to the black shirts. 11 yards for your longest run play of the night. That's a win to me. Jacob, thank you for the $10 super chat. Thank you for being a member. Plenty of things that can be nitpicked, and we won by 31. That's how things were in the 90s. Love where we're going. That's the bottom line, right? We're getting back to being back. We're getting back to the Nebraska football standard. We're getting back to what we as fans expect. The expectation that people told us we're not allowed to have because Nebraska is dead and gone. That 90s Nebraska vibe will never come back. No. Matt Rule remembers it. Dylan Raiola remembers it because it was in his bloodline. It's okay to have critiques. It's okay to expect more. It's okay to want to win at a championship level. And it's okay to expect that out of your coaches and players. So, yes, we're going to nitpick, but so are the coaches, so are the players, so is everybody else around the country who set the expectations that we did. And it is what it is. But at the same time, like you said, we're going to enjoy the win, and we're just going to, see where it goes. Bands, thank you for the $5 super chat. Their QB always seemed to throw it just as our pass rush was getting there. I'm a little frustrated with the missed tackles on first contact. Okay, so yes, missed tackles was an issue, but credit to their QB. Aiden Dunn, is that his name? I think it's Aiden Dunn. Well, I don't want to say it wrong. Got to respect him after tonight. He was 13 of 25, 117 yards. He had 11 carries for 49 yards, and he had 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. Here's the thing with that guy. He had hands in his face. Nebraska executed. He had guys coming at him full speed. Again, Nebraska executed. They did their job in those moments. There's only so much you can do as a defender. When your hand is here, I mean, it was like this. The dude's throwing like this. The ball's coming out while a hand is in his face. When you're still completing passes and your receivers are making plays, I mean, that's just credit to you being a good football player. I underestimated him. He came out hot, and yeah, he couldn't score any points, but he had some good plays. And although, yeah, it was frustrating to watch over and over and over, I couldn't sit there and say, oh, the defense isn't playing well. I had to sit there and say, wow, I underestimated Northern Iowa. This quarterback's got an arm on him, and these receivers are coming up clutch when he needs them to, because there were some big moments. Again, we're nitpicking because Nebraska held that guy to 3 points. They never scored a touchdown. It's insane. I'm just so appreciative to be a Nebraska fan. So thank you, Matt Rule, for allowing me to nitpick a 31-point victory. Because 2 years ago, a year ago, whatever, I would have just been enjoying a 1-point win over UNI. I would have been sitting here celebrating it with champagne. All of us would have. We would have been like, oh my God, thank you. We freaking won a game, because we couldn't win any. Anyway, Bands, I agree with you. I get it. But yeah, it's tough. Serial says you'll get that corn craze silver play button from the hype around Nebraska if we beat Ohio State and start 8-0. I know I'll have as many subscribers as you do at that point. Think about that. All of what I've built through Corn Craze, all of what we've built together, because it's not me, it's you guys. Really, the community has grown because you guys share it, you guys comment, you guys watch the videos till the end, you guys hit the like button, you guys donate to make sure I can stay alive so I can keep making content, right? So what we've built together as a Corn Craze unit is spectacular. And it's spectacular because I started building it from gutter times. I started building it when no one cared. I started building it when there was nothing to be excited about. And if there's finally going to be the day where we get to celebrate consistently, and all of those fans who, you know, they didn't want to sit here with us and nitpick and complain because they just want to be here for the happy times, which I totally respect and understand. Why would you want to be here? We are psychopaths, like I talked about. Then yeah, I think this channel has a lot of room to grow, and it's going to be really fun because what makes this channel so cool is the community. What makes this channel fun is the chat interactions. It's the comments. It's the back and forth. It feels like a forum. It's a place where we can all just give our honest opinions and our honest thoughts. I can answer questions. I can talk to you guys and hear what you actually have to say to give me different insight and different perspective, because you guys know just as much as I do from a different lens, right? So yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited. This is funny. Cell Pop says, I'm 30 minutes behind on this live stream, but a bunch of overreacting. You and I punched up and we won 34-3. You're reacting like it was 17-14. Look, I told you I'm a psychopath. I told you I'm going to overreact, and I told you this is ridiculous. This whole conversation I'm having with the chat is absolutely absurd. Like I said a second ago, we should be popping champagne, just happy that we won the game in a dominant fashion. But we're psychopaths. We want Big Ten championships. We want natties. We want Dylan to feel like he can come here and win at the highest level. So we just want to see the best for him, and we want to see the best for this team and all these superstar players who are on this roster who are going to go play in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I'm a psycho. Cell Pop, it's me. What did you expect? But no, I'm not complaining. This, again, I said it earlier, I'm not complaining. Matt, thank you for the $5 super chat. Thank you for being a member. He says, should we be worried with the running offense you and I showed tonight in future games? A few times we looked lost where the ball actually was. Okay, so I think we should be actually excited, number one, because even though we got through the line and guys would squeak out to the second level, the linebackers were taking care of business and they weren't letting anybody get into the third level. So that's one positive takeaway. Positive takeaway two is Nebraska continued to show their dominance, and they forced that offensive line to hold them to make sure they couldn't get through. And even when they did hold them, i.e. Ty Robinson, Ty was still breaking through that line. So Nebraska's rush, their run D, their pass D, whatever you want to say, they look good the entire time. There were just some missed tackles, some misreads. It's hard when you've got a zone read type of quarterback who can tuck it and keep it, right? I think Nebraska's going to have the benefit of playing against quarterbacks who aren't going to be running as much. And so because going forward, Nebraska won't play as many dual threat QBs, I don't think that's an area of concern. Thank you again for the super chat. Jacob, thank you for the $10. He says, for those curious, Nebraska once beat Pacific 70-21 in 1994, and it was treated as a loss. and like the season was over because Frazier was hurt and the defense gave up 21. That's how this feels. Yeah, that is how it feels. It feels like because Nebraska didn't dominate as hard as they usually do, and when I say usually, the last 2 weeks, yeah, it feels like they went through it. And I promise you, these players expected more, and I promise you the coaching staff did too. So thank you for the comment. That's a good point, Jacob. Zach, thanks for being a member. He says, Connor, do you think the young age of Garrett McGuire is showing in our wide receiver room and how they play, or is it something else? I do not blame Garrett McGuire for it. I think Garrett McGuire has been a quarterback at a high level. He's been a coach's son his whole entire life. I do not think he's ill-equipped to be that coach. I think he's a great receivers coach. I do think the wide receiver room is so good at catching balls, making plays, that they're deficient in other areas, such as maybe creating separation or blocking downfield. And that's okay. You have to build, you have to grow, right? So I'm not gonna blame either party. I think that the receivers have done a good job so far. I'm hoping they continue to progress, and I don't think Garrett McGuire's to blame. My thought. Cypher says UNI beats power teams like Iowa or Iowa State sometimes. I 100% think that UNI could go in and compete with an Iowa State or an Iowa this year, just like they did with Nebraska tonight. And I think Nebraska is just a more talented team than both those other two teams. So I think UNI would actually potentially score more points on either of those. Yo-Yo says, what are we going to be ranked tomorrow? I have no idea. Some people are thinking that it's going to be like top 20. I don't know about that. Evo says, covered LMAO, which I think that's the bottom line. Nebraska covered tonight. They won by 31, and the line was 30.5. Fluffy says, is there a reason that Rule doesn't lead the tunnel walk, but Corey Campbell does? I don't know. I'm not sure why he does that. I don't know how they assign who's going to lead him out the tunnel, but I don't care who does it as long as they're excited and pumped up. You know what I mean? I want to see them excited, and I want to see them coming out fiery, because when the players come out fiery, they obviously play better. Andrew, thank you for the $10 super chat. He says, we haven't had a winning season since 2016. This is an amazing feeling. Great job, Connor. College football is not ready for Nebraska to be back. Pop champagne. Let's enjoy the ride, GBR. You know, I'm so happy we can enjoy it together, Andrew. It's been a long time. I mean, it's been the entirety of my channel where we have spurts. We've had moments where I come on and I celebrate a win. But almost every time it was me coming to the camera and just complaining the entire time. So forgive me if I complain a little bit. I literally learned how to do this complaining. When I started the channel and when I started doing live stream reactions, do you know why I started doing them? Because Nebraska was losing a bunch, and I was so emotional and so pissed off that I wasn't able to capture my emotions in a video that I would record, and edit, and do all that. I would have to do it all in the moment. And so because I wanted to capture the emotion the right way, I'd have to come and rant to you immediately right after the game. So I'm continuing to do that. But it's hard for me because the only emotions I felt towards Nebraska football were heartbreak. It was down bad. It was upsetting. It was, I'm pissed off and I'm not going to have a good week because Nebraska lost, and all I can think about and all I care about, my number one hobby, is Nebraska and college football. And why is my team not in the conversation when everybody else's is? You know what I mean? So I'm just enjoying the ride, and I'm enjoying being back to relevancy, because we can definitely say, even though Nebraska's not back, they're definitely relevant again. Big D, thank you for being a member for 18 months. He says, I'm loving being 3-0. It feels effing great, and that's the bottom line. Nebraska's 3-0. Nebraska's ranked. Nebraska is going to be in position to beat a 3-0 Illinois team next week and to keep improving down the line to the point where they could be competing for a Big Ten championship, and that's all we can ask for. All of us want the same thing. We want to see Nebraska succeed. We want to see players get developed and go to the NFL. And we want to see championships so that we can all brag about it to our friends, right? So Nebraska's on path to do that. And it starts with Illinois this week because Big Ten play is a different beast. But with all of that said, I've been on here for an hour and 10 minutes and my voice is getting a little shot. I'm still getting over this little cold I have. My nose is all congested. I got to get off of here. So thank you for being here. I'm going to see you in the next one. It's good to be ranked. Go Big Red.